We are beginning to see that positive step-parent-stepchild relationships are really important for kids' well-being, but the secure base is mom or dad. In a step family, I turn to my kid, I've turned away from you. And we're not wired for this as humans. We're wired for the people close to us to turn towards us. Knowing that this is the structure is helpful. It's incredibly helpful that every time there is a kid in the room, step parents will be stuck outsiders, and stuck outsiders feel invisible and rejected and like I don't matter. And parents are stuck insiders. I feel torn. Every time I turn to you, I have to turn away from my kid. I turn to my kid, I turn away from you. So stuck insiders and stuck outsiders is the structure. It's part of the structure. It's not that somebody is failing. And it's hard. And what successful step couples do is to reach for each other.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about blended families. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Patricia Papernow. Dr. Papernow is widely recognized as one of the world's foremost experts on blended families. She is the author of several books and the recipient of Distinguished Contribution Awards from the American Family Therapy Academy and the American Psychological Association. You can reach Dr. Papernow at her website, stepfamilyrelationships.com, and I'll include that link in the show notes. Welcome, Patricia. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing this message, which is so important. And when I was checking out your website, it said there are 4 reasons why we need to become more informed and to be better prepared about step families. It said, 1, step families are everywhere. And that is so true. And 2 of my daughters are in a step family relationship.
Are they? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And also, number 2, the challenges are intense, and we're getting a chance to see that firsthand. It's hard.
Yeah.
And the 3rd reason is what works is not intuitive. And number 4 is we know what works. And that's why we're having this conversation, because we need something that works. Will you please help us?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad to be here because as I often say, I'm somewhere between passionate and desperate to get this information into the hands of people. I think the first thing to know is that a step family is not just another first-time family. In a first-time family, when kids are born, they are hardwired for attachment to both parents and vice versa. And over time in a first-time family, parents and kids develop shared understandings of how we do things, what matters to us. And the next kid and the next, if they are born into this already existing connection and also hardwired for attachment to both parents and vice versa. When there's a split, and one of the parents recouples, the couple may be in love, but the attachment is parent-child. And step-parents are brand new. They do not come in with that attachment. And the shared understandings of what's rude behavior, what's an expensive pair of sneakers, are between parents and kids, not between the couple and not between step-parents and step-kids. So there's a fundamentally different structure, and it makes 5 challenges. Should we say what they are?
Yes, please. Only 5, huh?
What the good news is that we have a ton of research about what works to meet these challenges. The first is that we are beginning, that the structure makes what I call stuck insiders and stuck outsiders. We are beginning to see that positive step-parent-stepchild relationships are really important for kids' well-being, but the secure base is mom or dad. So if you're my partner, if you're the step parent, and you finally got a moment with me and I'm turned towards you and we're talking, my kid is on the bus and either she made the soccer team or she didn't make the soccer team. She gets off the bus. The person she wants to share her news with is mommy or daddy. So she comes running in saying, mommy, 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 mommy. And I turn to her. In a first-time family, she would bringing it to both of us and we would both turn to her. In a step family, I'm a good parent. I turn to my kid, I've turned away from you. And we're not wired for this as humans. We're wired for the people close to us to turn towards us. Knowing that this is the structure is helpful. It's incredibly helpful that every time there is a kid in the room, step parents will be stuck outsiders, and stuck outsiders feel invisible and rejected and like I don't matter. And those are normal feelings. It's not pathological. And parents are stuck insiders. I feel torn. Every time I turn to you, I have to turn away from my kid. I turn to my kid, I turn away from you. And then, of course, I probably have an ex spouse who I also have to keep the peace with. And when I keep the peace with my ex, you're probably not real happy with me. So, stuck insiders and stuck outsiders is the structure. It's part of the structure. It's not that somebody is failing. And it's hard. And what successful step couples do is to reach for each other. What's painful is it's much, much easier to empathize with each other when we feel the same way. If the two of us are looking at our baby and we're both in love, it's like, ah, or, the kid's up at 3 a.m, we're both exhausted. That's much easier. But this is connecting across a huge emotional divide. So at a moment that I feel connected, you feel disconnected. And how do we reach for each other? How do we hear each other? It sure helps to know that this is normal. It's not that you're doing something bad or I'm doing something bad. So
So,
that's the first challenge.
okay. Whoa, that was huge. Simple, obvious when you say it out loud, and yet
Right.
rarely addressed. Because
Exactly.
I have seen this, I've seen this with my daughter. I've seen this with, I mean, my friends. This is the way it is, and how
That's
a
right.
person feels on the outside. The new
Yes.
spouse feels on the outside when the children come for their
And
every
they are.
visit.
They are on the outside and they're not doing something wrong. It's not that they're not trying hard enough. The attachment is different.
Okay. All right. So recognizing this is the structure that we're working with. This is the
That's right.
skeleton. So I'm probably better off if I don't automatically choose to be offended every time I am on the outside, but just recognize, oh,
It hurts and
it's
it's hard. And what do I need? I may need, you may need, well, one thing that is that when kids first arrive, kids, they need their parent, not their step parent. Feel free to go. There are people who believe, if the step parent goes off on their own, that's not family like. Well, it's very step family like because the outsider position is hard. And also, kids need their parent. As we'll see in the next challenge, parent child relationships are really important in step families, and kids need time alone with their parent. And go off and ride your bike. Go see your Aunt Grace, who adores you. Go see your best friend. Go take a knitting class, learn French. Do some things outside of the house if you are a step parent that give you satisfaction. And if you live in a small house, get a pair of earphones so that you have a way to withdraw sometimes, that you don't have to hang in that outsider position. And the other thing is, it is really important in step families to spend time together. And every time everybody's together, that outsider insider thing is strong. So it's also important in step families to carve out one-to-one time, one-to-one couple time when there are no kids, where the parent doesn't have to whip back and forth. And as we'll see in a second, one-to-one step parent child time and one-to-one step parent step child time.
wow. Okay. One of the things is you said this is counterintuitive, and what I'm hearing is counterintuitive. It
Yes,
seems like what the right thing to do would be to try to step in and to recreate, as you called it, the first time family scenario structure when it doesn't work.
exactly.
And so if I'm trying to fit that mold, automatically I'm kind of setting myself up for failure.
You got it
So
exactly.
So, what I need to do is to recognize this is okay and to go ahead and step away and find some place where I am not depending on my spouse or my stepchildren to fill me up is my job. I need to do something that's going to help me feel happy and to feel fulfilled, and then allow some time with the parent child. Um,
You
wow.
got it.
Okay. I am glad you're here. Not intuitive. Okay, what's number two?
Number two is kids need help with losses and loyalty binds and change. A first time family is really different for kids than a step family. The adults are thrilled, but let's talk about loss first. We are learning, the research is teaching us that strong, warm parent child relationships are really important for kids in step families. I think that's partly because secure attachment is the best medicine that there is for kids. And this is a huge transition. And we are also learning, study after study, that when parents recouple, kids lose parental time and attention. Now, that's partly because grown-ups are just as nuts when they fall in love as kids are. They are texting during homework. They're talking on the phone when they're in the car. They're not quite all there. And kids lose attention. And plus, the parent, once the step parent moves in, the parent is stuck in that insider position. So every time the parent turns to their kids, they know they're turning away from their partner. So the kids often feel a sense of loss, and this includes adult kids. Loyalty binds. A loyalty bind is, if I care for my stepmom, I'm disloyal to my mom. If I care for my stepdad, I'm disloyal to my dad. And in a high conflict divorce, if I care for my mom, I'm disloyal to my dad, and vice versa. Um, if you're an ex-spouse, recoupling's triggering. Adult I did not choose and cannot supervise is intimately involved with my kids, and I'm afraid they're going to push me out. So it's not unusual for ex-spouses to get a bit triggered and to leak that triggering on their kids. When and in our culture, we have a very nuclear family. The Anglo culture is there's two parents, and the family starts and stops at the doors. There are cultures, African American culture, for instance, is much more cross household. Whoever can help pitches in with kids. That is not the Anglo idea about family. So it makes easily for kids to have loyalty binds. If the adults are cooperative and supportive of each other, loyalty binds usually soften. If the adults are bad-mouthing each other, the loyalty binds get really painful for kids. So that's the second, losses and loyalty binds. And the third is change. The adults are in love. They're eager to move forward. And so often the couple moves forward much, much faster than the kids can bear. And what we know is, as the rate of change goes up, kids' well-being goes down. So this is, and for many kids, the transition to stepfamily is actually harder than the transition to divorce. And we think that's partly because the change is piling up. It also may be extra loyalty binds, but it's a lot of change for kids, and they're not excited. And now they have to share their parent, and there may be a move. So what helps? Well, for the first and most concrete thing is that one-to-one thing. Again, stepfamilies really do need to spend time together having fun and making a sense of us. And not only couple time, but parent-child time is really important. And our first-time family map for therapists and even for stepfamily members is the couple's the center of the family. If the couple's okay, the family's okay. In stepfamilies, parent-child relationships and also step-parent, stepchild relationships are also important. So one-to-one time for the couple, one-to-one parent-child time, really consistent and reliable and regular, is really helpful. It's a sweet story, and one of the research studies that sort of captures this is a girl who said, when I was alone with my mom, every Friday night we would take out a blanket and lay it out in the living room, and we'd have a picnic, and we'd sit and have dinner and have a picnic, and we'd talk about the week. We'd always do it every week. We'd talk about the week. And now, since my mom is with John, we never do that anymore. And doesn't that capture the sense of loss? There it is. And that this child really needed to carry that in to this next family. So that's the child challenge. It does help if the grown-ups get it, but it's hard. First of all, no parent wants to turn to their kid's pain. It's one of the hardest things in the world to turn towards your own child's pain. And if it's pain, it's something you've done that much extra hard. But really, the most regulating thing in the world is for somebody to get it. We all know that. When we're in pain, we don't want somebody to say, oh, it'll be fine. We want somebody to say, I get it. I get it. So for parents to get this is a big change. And to be able to be curious and empathic. If somebody says, I hate my stepmom, gee, say some more. This sounds like it's tough, as opposed to, she's a nice person.
Wow. Allowing the children to feel their own feelings, even when it does not jive with what you want it to be.
What you wish it would be.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
that's hard. Man, I'm just trying to put myself into the role of a child being able to experience this, or the spouse. All these different things, so much change. And I feel like there's a burden. There's so much. When we talk about we need one-on-one time with the kids and one-on-one time with the spouse, where is this time coming from?
Even little bits of time. Ron Taffel talks about sacred in-between times. If I'm driving a child to school, I'm not multitasking while I'm doing it. If I'm helping with homework, I'm not also on my phone. That I'm really with a child when I'm with a child. And, even a few minutes a day of full attention, there's some research about this, makes a difference. 15 or 20 minutes a day where I pay full attention to you. A regular time a week when mom and kids or dad and kids go for ice cream or go roller skating or sit and read books together makes a difference.
That's helpful. Thank you for helping with that clarification, because there's only 24 hours in a day, and we got to spend
You
some
notice that?
sleeping and we got to spend some of that time working. So short moments, but the
Where you
magic
fully
is
attend.
right.
You're fully
I'm here with you.
right.
I'm not scrolling through Facebook or my
Right.
text, or in fact, my
That's
phone
it.
may be someplace else. Let me listen to you. Let me see you. Let me hear you. Okay.
Beautiful.
All
And
right.
in some families, it really helps to have my daughter and her husband have three little ones. They've started making special time. Each kid gets special time. And that's maybe 15 or 20 minutes. And mom or dad just sits and plays with them. The kid leads. I think they learned it from a therapist somewhere. And you can see the kids love it. It's very regulating.
That is fantastic, because that's something that maybe we can do. And it could even be as simple as, I'm just going to set a timer. I'm all yours for 15, and then I got to get back to work. So they don't feel like I cheated them because it wasn't super long.
Mhm. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
That's the second challenge. Insiders and outsiders is the first. Really taking care of kids' needs is the second. And the third is really critical. Parenting and step parenting are often quite different. They are both really important for kids' well being. So we have over 30 studies that parents need to retain the disciplinary role until or unless step parents have built a trusting, caring relationship with their stepchildren. Now, that is non-intuitive because I'm an adult in the family, I'm a step parent, and I expect to step in and be, an adult in the family. The other thing is, I'm now taught all over the world, step parents all over the world want more limits and boundaries with their stepkids. And parents all over the world want more love and understanding for their kids. So what a step parent thinks is rude behavior, a parent thinks is normal kid behavior. Kid behavior is more irritating to step parents. And it's partly that there's not shared understanding of what's rude and what's not, but it's also, it's almost neurobiological. When you have connection, it makes a hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin buffers stress. Parents have connection. They have that attachment. They have kids looking at them directly. They have the experience of having held their child as a baby and watched them grow. And even if that kid is having trouble, that kid is probably somewhat connected to parents because parents are the secure base. That makes oxytocin, and that makes kid ill behavior just not as upsetting. Step parents have none of that. And a stepchild who is feeling a tight loyalty bind or a lot of loss may not even be looking at a step parent. And what's more irritating, the kid who leaves a mess in the kitchen is my 13-year-old stepdaughter who barely looks at me. That's going to be a lot more irritating than my kid who, I just gave a big hug to. Well, I'm not going to be thrilled about it, but it's just not the same level of irritating. So this is a hard challenge. And the research is so clear that successful step parents focus on connection, not correction. They focus on getting to know their stepkids. Makes sense because you're brand new in this system. And these kids have been through a lot of change. And so your job is just to get to know these kids and to resist the urge to step in and make limits. Doesn't mean you have to be silent. You can, say to your partner, gee, I think little Zoe could, clean up her mess. But I'm going to tell you, if you're going to say something step parent to the parent, I don't know a parent who isn't sensitive about their parenting. Say it kindly if you can. But parents need to be the limit setter, and step parents lead with warmth, not control. And find one-to-one things to do with your stepkid, because every time the parent is present, that stronger relationship pushes you to the outside. So find one-to-one things to do together and let the kid lead. Do a project. Maybe this kid, really loves, I don't know, chocolate cake. Make a chocolate cake together. Maybe they love Mexican food. Make Mexican food together. Maybe you know how to do woodworking and they'd like to learn. Maybe they're having trouble with homework. A lot of step parents help with homework, and you can help with homework. And some of the other, they're called affinity building skills. Empathize. You see a kid looks vulnerable. Gee, you look a little sad today. How was that test? Everyday talk. How was soccer today? The kid grunts. That's disappointing. But you've put out some energy, and that is what successful step parents do.
I am so glad that you got to this step. It starts to fill in the pieces. When we started with the structure and saying, the step parent might need to step away, maybe leave, I'm thinking, well, how do you ever blend? How do you get together?
Right.
But now we're talking about, okay, it's important to allow that one-on-one time, but it's also appropriate and necessary to build your relationships with the children, to be able to create some one-on-one time and to be able to focus on connection, not correction. And as I was reading through your website, there was a distinction between authoritarian and authoritative parenting style. Would you mind kind of explaining that?
That's
So
really
people can
important.
understand?
Authoritarian is do this or else. Jump how high. Authoritative is you lead with warmth and responsiveness. I know you're really, really mad. And you still have firm structure. And it's not okay to throw things. That's authoritative. Authoritarian is if you throw that again, I'm putting you in your room without supper. Authoritarian, step parents often would like parents to be more authoritarian, but it turns out authoritarian parenting by parents is not good for kids. It has much higher rates of depression. Authoritarian parenting by step parents is real easy to fall into, and it's disastrous and toxic for step parent, step-child relationships.
That's fantastic. And I loved how when you gave the example, you used the word and. I understand that you're feeling this way, and
And
it's not okay. Not but and.
right.
There's something magical about and.
It's really
Sometimes
true.
when we use but, it negates whatever
Whatever you just
positive
said,
thing we
it's
said.
really true. Yeah.
All right, what's the next one?
Oh, let's add one more thing. It turns out, this is recent research, if step parents, as long as step parents lead with warmth and not control, there is a very wide range of positive roles. There are step parents, this is one set of studies, found there were some step parents who were somewhat parent-like. They were involved in lots of domains, very involved with their kids. There were a lot of step parents in these two studies who were very involved with homework and school and academics. And then there were a bunch of step parents who were, he called them casually connected, warm, friendly, casually connected. All three of those are linked to positive well-being in kids.
Hmm.
Only the first is parent-like, and it's actually the minority. What's linked to negative well-being in kids is very distant, detached step parents and coercive, harsh step parenting.
Isn't that wonderful to know that there's more than one model that is okay?
Yes.
Because
Ah,
sometimes you're able to make that connection, and sometimes maybe not. Maybe they don't need you
right.
as much, depending on the age or the temperament of the child. And but to say, okay, this works, this works. But the one we want to avoid is this authoritarian, this
That's
controlling.
right.
So, yay, yay, there's more than one right way to do things. Hooray. Okay.
And we don't want to compete usually with the parent. That's a
Mm.
really important one. There was a wonderful qualitative study of 19 kids that had positive relationships with their stepmothers. 18 of them said what was positive is the stepmother didn't try to replace their mother.
Mm.
18 of the 19. And the 19th, I think, was quite young. Uh, the age makes a difference. I forgot to say this about kids, age and gender. Boys seem to have an easier time with step families than girls. Very young kids have an easier time than older kids. And the kids who have the hardest time are early adolescent girls, have a very hard time.
Hmm.
And kids who are having a hard time are going to need more one to one parent time, a little less family time. Kids in a loyalty bind are going to need more one to one time and less family time.
Well, that's helpful to know. Okay, thank you.
All right. So we got the first three, insiders and outsiders, kids and parenting and step parenting. The fourth is we got to build a new family culture, and we have at least two pre-existing cultures here. And how do we do it? So it's the first Christmas, and stepmom is happily hanging white lights on the tree. Stepdaughter comes in, sees the white lights. She's used to colored lights. She completely falls apart. She goes to her room and she slams the door. Now, uh, stepmom thinks stepdaughter's ruined Christmas. Dad is caught in his insider role. He knows why his daughter's upset. He knows his wife is upset, and he's a little frozen in his stuck insider role. What needs to, and the kid is left alone crying. She calls her mother and says her stepmother's a witch, and they agree. That's the way it can go badly. The way it could go well is, oops, we've run into a difference here. Dad gives stepmom a hug out of kid's eye shot. We can talk about this in a moment. A physical contact between adults and step families. It intensifies loss and loyalty binds and change. Dad goes to sit with his daughter. She says, how could she possibly put colored lights on the tree? And he doesn't say, no big deal. He does say, oh, sweetie, so upsetting. And if he's had a little step family education, he might say, oh, so much change, so much change. I'm so sorry. And she cries until she's done. And then maybe she and stepmom and dad and her little brother have Christmas cookies and cocoa, and they share stories of trees that they grew up with and what they liked about them and something they didn't like. Those stories have to be shared on purpose in a step family because we come from two different cultures. So part of what I want people to know is do things together. Start to create some joint um, rituals. And you're going to need input from everybody, especially in a ritual that it is familiar to everybody, about what matters. And you're going to have a lot of, I call it learning by goofing. I just told you a story of learning by goofing, you know, because lots of things that are really sort of deeply rooted values and ways of doing things don't have words anymore. It wouldn't have occurred to to dad and stepmom and stepdaughter to talk about what color light should go on the tree. You know, colored lights, white light. It wouldn't occur to them until, oh my God. um, and I think it really helps to change the metaphor that putting a step family together is a lot less like putting blueberries and strawberries and blending a smoothie. It's a lot more like putting a group of Japanese and a group of Italians and saying, make a family together. And telling everybody to eat pasta with chopsticks is not going to do it. You know, it's going to make more misery than unity. So it was on a radio show once, and a woman called in. She said, yeah, it's a slow cooker. It is not fast food. Making a step family is a slow cooker. She had a Southern accent that I can't quite capture, but it's a slow cooker. You're going to do it a little at a time. You're going to have learning by goofing. And the more input you can get, and sometimes there's a lot of negotiation. You know, who knows what this family's going to do? Are they going to have two trees? Are they going to have half white, half colored? I mean, who knows what they're going to do? And sometimes you don't even know what matters until you've goofed. And just to know that that's, learning by goofing is not failure. It's
learning.
Yeah, learning about each other. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Boy, that example was so amazing, because how easy would it be to just move forward with what you're used to and not even think that that might be a problem, something that
Right.
matters to someone else. So, wow. Okay.
And how easy to think, well, she's ruined Christmas, when in fact what it is she's having a really hard time with white lights.
Having a hard time with change. And I love the way that
Yes.
you explained that. In your example, it wasn't, though this is no big deal, just get used to it, we've got new things. It was first listening. Oh, this is something that matters to you. You are experiencing change and it hurts. And just validating someone with their feelings. And then once you feel heard, then maybe you can also realize, it's not that bad. This is a change. It's not that bad. Beautiful. All right. What's the next one?
And then the fifth is, last but not least, there's an ex-spouse. There's another parent
Dang it.
outside the household who is a permanent part of all step families, dead or alive, lovely or horrible. And the other parent, the ex-spouse, has to, again, share their kids with somebody they didn't choose, they can't supervise, and they're often afraid of losing their kids too. The research is really interesting that, the most robust predictor of poor well-being in kids is not divorce, and it's not step families, it's not single parent families. It's adult tension and conflict.
Huh.
Kids in low conflict, divorced families are doing better than kids in high conflict, never divorced families. We have 50 years of research. Conflict and adult tension are toxic for kids. And there's a very interesting study of moderate tension these are non-clinical, non-divorced families, impacts kids, what was it like, academics and their attention and their immune systems. Turned out moderate tension between the adults compromises kids' sleep, which then has all of those. So if your kids are having trouble sleeping, check the level of adult tension. And it doesn't have to be nasty fighting. It could be just moderate tension. Kids really need to be protected from adult tension. If you're having a hard time with your ex, you do not say a word to your kids. You do not leak to your kids. And you don't fight with your ex in front of your kids. It's too hard for kids. And the research is kids who do the best have positive relationships with mom and dad, mom and stepmom, dad and stepdad, and actually grandparents on both sides. Kids do best when they have positive relationships with all the adults in their lives. And sharing's hard. We tell everybody to share, but sharing your kids is hard. It's really hard. I've said to a mom who was really leaking because she was having such a hard time, there's probably, I know you love your kids. There's probably one thing you can do that's the most important thing, but it's probably the hardest. You still want to hear. It's supporting your kids' relationship with their dad and their new stepmom. That's going to be hard. Let's look at how I can help.
Wow. And that takes some compassion and selflessness, because we have to also be aware of our children's needs and put them first.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, sometimes, all too frequently in step families, the children are used, they're weaponized against
That's
the
right.
other, against the former spouse, because it's the most powerful way to hurt them.
Right. And because sharing is hard. I have a new colleague who said she is a stepmother, and her husband's ex-wife took her out for a drink right away and was incredibly friendly. And my colleague said, "So explain this to me. How come you're so nice?" And here's what she said. This is the mother of this woman's stepkids. She said, "Parents say that I die for my kids. I do anything for my kids. And then how is it that a parent can't get along with an ex-spouse and their new partner for their kids? On behalf of my kids, you and I are going to get along." Really moving,
Boy, that's beautiful.
isn't it?
Right. We do say, I would do anything for my kids.
Right,
And yet we don't always follow through when the
right.
anything that is required is something that is very difficult.
That's right. You got it. I do think we have to talk about what about when a parent has died, because we've seen more of this since COVID. Um, Oftentimes, that's still a step family. Parent-child attachment is forever. And part of the dilemma is that step parents, especially step moms, feel like they're supposed to step in and replace the missing parent. Very, very young kids sometimes want a replacement. Most children do not want a replacement. They do not want a replacement. They want help from the grown-ups to keep their parent close, to grieve, to think about them. Um, they do not want a replacement. And, kids vary in how they handle loss. Some kids get pretty pissy, which is really hard for step parents. And it makes step parents want to step into discipline, which, as we now know, is going to backfire. But what kids need is for the adults to include the missing parent as part of the family. And this can be hard for step parents. But where do you want to put a picture of your mom? At your graduation, your dad would be so proud of you. How shall we keep your dad? And I had a neighbor whose long time relationship with a young adult stepdaughter who was getting married. And she knew that she didn't want to tread on the mother had died. And she said, "Should I just really stay in the background?" I said, "I think maybe you should sit down with your stepdaughter and say, how do you want to have your mom included in this wedding?" What her dad's probably not going to do it from what I know about him. He's just going to suck it up. Uh, but how do you want to have your mom involved in this wedding? And they found a big picture and put it on an easel in the front. She went to her sister and found some things that her mother had worn and wore them with her wedding dress. Um, and the sister was involved in this conversation with my neighbor, who is the stepmom. And the sister included the mother in the toast. The stepmother included the mother in the toast, so that the mother was there at that wedding.
That's beautiful. I
Yeah,
love
so
how
very
you
gentle.
shared that. As we're talking, you're sharing the research and what works. And then I think when in doubt, especially as children are older, old enough to make a decision like marriage, is let's communicate, let's ask.
Right.
What would you like? Rather than trying to read their mind or guess, let's ask.
If the kid can't answer, give them a multiple choice. Would you like this or this or this? And none of those may be right, but they'll help the kids start thinking.
I appreciate you so much. Is there anything you want to make sure we cover before we close today?
I think important to know that there's a lot of stuff out there that's not that research words would be evidence-based. It's somebody's opinion about what works. Unfortunately, my two books are still some of the only things out there. So Surviving and Thriving in Step Family Relationships and the Step Family Handbook are some of the only two things out there still, sadly, that are that really include what we know works and what we know doesn't work. The books will be helpful. There are some videos on my website and podcasts for people who don't like to read. And both books are on audio tape for people who don't like to read.
Right. And you can also use this for time, like if you're on the commute and if you're listening to something, you can be listening while you're driving. And it almost gives you a little bit of extra opportunity to be able to fit some things in that we'd like to, but we got to do all this one-on-one time. So we need to use our time well.
That's true.
Oh, Patricia, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I appreciate you.
And you're a great interviewer. It was really fun.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Richard Bach. He said, "The bond that links your true family is not one of blood, but of respect and joy in each other." Today, I invite our listeners to link your family with love, respect, and joy, regardless of the size or shape of your family. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for tuning in to Linda's Corner podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends to help us inspire even more listeners. Be sure to visit hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free and affordable resources to help you overcome life's challenges. And explore healingbreathworkdetox.com, where you'll find transformative tools for deep inner healing and lasting change. Also, don't forget to check out my books, Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. Your journey to hope, healing, and happiness starts here.